Geno Malkin had a lot to say after practice on Friday, and Pat and I are going to get into some of his comments. Plus, I'm going to give you my observations from day 2 of training camp right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Send for Wet. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins, and you can follow the show's Instagram at LockedOn_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. So, Pat, after one of the practices today, Evgeni Malkin had quite a bit to say to the media. So he was mainly asked about, hey, it's a contract year. What are you planning? And this caused a bit of a ruckus between some fans on social media. I just want to give everyone, the full quote here so that they can have the full context as to what Evgeni Malkin said. Shout out to Taylor Haas. She was the one that asked this question in the media scrum. And Malkin says this: I hope I stay here like Sid and Tanger. Penguins forever, for sure. I hope we play great. Everything goes perfect. Perfect for myself, too. I want to stay here for sure. So he does want to stay here if he wants to play for another season next year. Pat, way earlier this offseason, you brought up like the worst case scenario of, he could potentially waive his no move clause and it could be like a Brad Marchand situation. That is what that is, people. It is a worst case scenario. I saw a lot of people freaking out on Twitter today with all this other stuff. Evgeni Malkin, bottom line, wants to stay in Pittsburgh. He wants to retire here with Sidney Crosby and Chris Letang. And I think he made that perfectly clear during his press conference today. That's how I saw it, man. I don't think he left anything open.
I'm going to push back ever so slightly because I'm mostly in your camp with this, that I think he made it clear he wants to stay a Penguin. If I were to put odds on it, I'd go 90-10. He's going to finish here. But what I think we have to keep in mind is that 10%, because he did also say, we see a story like Brad Marchand looking good. Team trades you, you win the cup. It's a little weird. Of course, everybody wants to make the playoffs, maybe make one more run at the cup. A great story, but I don't know how I would feel if the team wants to trade me. That quote mixed with the fact that Dubas has basically said, which this is also me pushing back on all the reports and all the discussion of like, oh, the Penguins aren't going to offer him another contract. Dubas has never said that. He has said he's going to meet with him around the Olympic break to discuss things, which isn't him saying, I'm not bringing Malkin back. But at the same time, that discussion could also be, if the team is struggling pretty badly and Malkin's having a bit of a resurgence, there's a world where Dubas could say, hey, you want me to send you to a contender so you can play this out? And I feel like Malkin would probably say no, but kind of unlike the Crosby quotes from earlier this week, he didn't totally slam the door shut. He left ever so little of a opening, but it really does feel like, to bring it all the way back full circle to how you referenced it, it feels like absolute worst case scenario where the team is bottomed out. He's doing pretty well. He's on an expiring deal. You can get something back for him, and it does right by him. And if there's one thing we know about Kyle Dubas as a manager, he very frequently does right by his players.
I agree with that. I will say the only way this even has a 5% chance of happening is, I think, if he goes to management and says, hey, can you do this? Can you send me to a contender? But again, everything he said today, I don't see him doing that at all. He even added, it looks good, but if a team trades you and you don't win the cup when it comes to Marchand, then it is a little bit weird, which is right. It's a great story when you see it on TV, but I don't know how I would feel if the team wants to trade me. Again, that last quote, he doesn't want to go anywhere, man. I think he's made it pretty clear today that he does not want to go anywhere, that he wants to retire as a member of the Penguins. He wants to play it out with Sidney Crosby and Chris Letang. As we both have mentioned, the worst case scenario is that, he goes to management and says, hey, we've bottomed out in this scenario. Send me to a contender. But I think
again,
that's like 5%, and I don't see that happening. He wants to retire here, people.
Again, I don't want to. I want to make sure it's perfectly clear. I'm not saying that, Geno's gonna go or he's unhappy or anything like that. The only thing I'm just putting out there is that it wasn't a 100% ironclad, I ain't going. He didn't do the Jordan Belfort, I ain't leaving. But for the most part, I would say it's way, way more likely he stays and retires here. It's just that you can look at some of the quotes, you can look at some of the way he talked about it, in like everything else in the world, including the Crosby stuff. The possibility exists. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not even saying that it's high. I'm not even saying it's highly likely. There's just ever so slight of a chance. And it would be dishonest of us as analysts of the team to not address it. But again, I come down way more on your side that he's probably not going anywhere. But given some of his quotes and the way he talked about it, it's not 110% out of the picture.
Okay, that's fair on that. I'll give you that. I don't think I have much else to say on it. We don't really need to spend a whole segment on this. But Pat, we do want to end this segment with some really cool news today regarding former Penguins general manager Ray Shero. He was named the 2025 Lester Patrick Trophy recipient for his outstanding service to hockey in the United States, the architect of the 2009 Stanley Cup run. A really good general manager in Penguins history. Obviously, Pat, we lost him earlier this year, and I wish he were alive to, get this award because he very much deserves it. But Pat, your thoughts on this?
Extremely deserving. I mean, he had a lot of things and a lot of involvement to do with USA Hockey for years and years and years, from 2007 all the way up till 2024. He obviously American born, son of the great Ray Shero. And you said it, he was a great general manager for the Penguins for the majority of his tenure. And we do have to mention that he had some massive shoes to fill when he became the Penguins general manager. It was not an easy job to succeed the legendary Craig Patrick. And with that said, along with having to replacing Craig Patrick, this was a young, star-studded team with pretty high expectations, and then running on a completely parallel track. There was still uncertainty if this team was going to stay in Pittsburgh. And a huge reason that I don't think gets discussed enough when it comes to Ray Shero's tenure as the Penguins general manager, if he doesn't push all the correct buttons and help this team continue to take the next steps into becoming champions, they might not be here, because there were so many other external factors that have nothing to do with fan support, with the team itself, just so many things away from hockey, that if they weren't a team that could viably be profitable, competitive, interesting, they were probably going to leave. And because of a lot of the moves Ray Shero did around the core group, making them one of the best teams in the league, they're probably not still in Pittsburgh. So really awesome honor for Ray Shero. Well-deserved. And man, you talk about somebody the hockey world lost way too early. Ray Shero, man, one of the best.
Great GM, especially when he was in his prime. I will always say that. Again, the architect of the 2009 Stanley Cup, made so many shrewd moves both that year and in 2008. So well-deserved honor for Ray Shero. But I think that'll do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, I'm going to get into some of my observations for being in Cranberry for day 2 of Penguins training camp. That's coming up right after this. Before we get to that, though, we have to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So, are you ready to play? If so, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, we're back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. That's my co-host, Patrick Damp. And Pat, the Penguins, they didn't do A, B, C today. They kind of went a little bit backwards. Group A was the last one to finish up. I guess I'll still start with them. Really cool seeing Ville Koivunen with Sidney Crosby yet again today. Hint, hint. Might see that during the regular season because Ville Koivunen was once again good today. Sidney Crosby, by the way, was flying. It might have been only day 2 of training camp, but he still looks as good as ever, and he was making a lot of players look like pylons. I don't say that lightly. He was just on a different level. There was one sequence in a 3-on-3 drill where Blake Lizotte was doing everything to keep up with him. He was doing a solid job. Sid was still just blowing right past him. I was just sitting there like in awe, like, buddy, it's day 2 of training camp, and this is what you're doing to a long time, not even a long time NHLer, but, a solid NHLer in his career. It was just crazy to watch. You also saw Harrison Brunick with Owen Pickering in a lot of drills, whether it was 3-on-3 or 5-on-5. By the way, Brunick and Pickering got a lot of ice time with Crosby and Koivunen today, and I thought they skated well. They moved the puck well. They defended well. That's a pairing that you might see one day in the NHL. I thought they were both really solid together. You also got to see Harrison Brunick go up against Erik Karlsson in numerous drills, and I thought Brunick actually held his own fairly well against, one of the best offensive defensemen, if not the best of this generation, I should say. I do think Brunick played really well there. In one of the other groups, you saw Anthony Mantha skate more with Evgeni Malkin. I don't think, again, that's on accident. I think it's pretty obvious to me, even though we're 2 days into camp, that you are going to see these players get ice time. There's a reason why they are both in the same training camp group, and they've already started to build some chemistry. I thought they were both really solid again today. You also saw Philip Hollander with Brian Rust and Ricard Raquel, which was fascinating. Hollander was kind of operating as the center on that line. He's played both throughout his career. He's played a lot of wing, but he's played a little bit of center as well. More wing, though, than center, in my opinion. But I thought Hollander was doing really well. I like that the coaching staff is giving him opportunities to play with Rust and Raquel. Don't think that's going to translate to the regular season, but I think it's the coaching staff saying, hey, we like what you did in the SHL. Let's see what you can do with 2 of our top players from last year. And I thought they were both really good, along with Hollander, I should say. So those are just some of my quick miscellaneous thoughts, Pat, from today. I'll get into more in a little bit, but I'm going to hand this over to you.
I have been extremely impressed with Ville Koivunen through 2 days. Obviously, it's 2 days. It's drills, it's simulation, and we know that hockey might be the A1 sport where nothing you do in practice, nothing you do in training camp is anything close to a game, an actual game, I should say. But this is what we wanted to see from Koivunen going into camp. Obviously, we also wanted to see it from McGroarty, but he's on the shelf. But back to Koivunen, this is what he had to do. He had to not only have a strong camp, but part of having that strong camp had to be showing that he can hang with the likes of Evgeni Malkin and even Sidney Crosby. We saw some good chemistry at the end of the year with both of them. He did not look at all out of place with either of them. However, you want him to take that next step. You don't want it to just be, yeah, he looks okay with them. He looks like he can keep up. He needs to be a genuinely complementary piece to one or both of them, where you're not just going, okay, if we need him, he can fill in on that line. And again, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That has its value, especially if you're a depth piece. But I think, in my estimation, with what we know about Koivunen the prospect and what is becoming Koivunen the NHL player, he's probably going to be a top 6 forward. And if he's going to be a top 6 forward, kind of like, say, Brian Rust, not making a one-to-one comparison, obviously, but like a Brian Rust, you need to evolve past, okay, he can hang, to, okay, these guys have chemistry together and they're producing together. And so far, through 2 days, the early returns on Koivunen's efforts in the way he's been building this offseason, it looks like it's starting to pay off. The one thing, though, I did want to ask you about, Hunter, because we all know, if you've been watching sports long enough, regardless of the sport, save for maybe baseball, the first 5 to 10 minutes of a game, you can exist on momentum alone. You can come rocketing out of the gate, but then once the rubber really starts to hit the road and you got to settle in and play, we'll see how good you were. How was the intensity of head coach Dan Muse on day 2?
Buddy, it was nuts. Dan Muse lost his voice once again. Like, if you listen to the media conference, just like yesterday's, his voice is just shot. Like, he's shouting for an hour and a half straight, starting at 8:45 in the morning. And then he has a little bit of a break, shouts for another 90 minutes straight, has a little bit of a break again, and then he shouts for 90 more minutes. So his voice is just absolutely gone by the time he speaks to the media. And, he's cussing up a storm sometimes, but this practice, and it was physical too. Like, there were some big hits along the boards. There were some cross checks being thrown as well. There was sometimes, like, there wasn't like any scuffles yet or, fights or anything like that. But during some plays at times, it felt like there was no love lost. Like, it's definitely very intense, very competitive. It's been pretty awesome to watch so far. And I will say, Pat, we did get an injury update on Kevin Hayes. He's going to be reevaluated in the next month. Took a big hit from Ryan Graves on Thursday along the board, stayed down for a little bit before some trainers helped him off the ice. He's going to be out for at least a month, so he'll be out for the start of the regular season, which sucks because he was off to a great start on Thursday. I thought he was the best player in his group before going down, was a total pest on the puck and a total pest going for the puck when he was defending. So that stinks. The other thing I did want to point out, we did get some systems work today, which was fun. The emphasis on puck pressure was very much there. We talked about that when Dan Muse got hired. That was one of the big elements that he's going to bring to the Penguins. And you saw that today. Like, there was a lot of drills where, the players that were defending the puck in their own zone were, in my opinion, winning most of the time because of their relentless pursuit to the puck. When someone has the puck, they're just going right to them. They are hounding these players. And it felt like that was lost a little bit towards the end of Mike Sullivan's tenure. Well, it's very much being brought back here, I think, on steroids, at least in camp. Again, this is only 2 days. I don't want to overreact or anything like that, but there was definitely a big emphasis on puck pressure during some drills today. And one more thing, if I may, some people may laugh at this. I thought Matt Dumba was pretty good today, man. I got to admit, scored a couple of nice goals, one off a beautiful slap shot, skated fine. I thought yesterday was Jackson Ivey's day for the right side. Today was Matt Dumba's. You're going to keep seeing a revolving door like this, right? I think some players on that side have good days. Some have bad days. Today, I thought was good for Matt Dumba, but it's still only day 2.
One thing that again, that is very encouraging to see from Dumba, because if you've been listening to the show over the summer, Hunter and I do not have the highest of expectations for Matt Dumba, but I'm of the belief, and maybe I'm a glass half full kind of guy, but I do believe there is still some game left in Matt Dumba. You just have to use him correctly. And if he and Dan Muse can find that, all the better for this team's rebuild, because he is a very high of the list reclamation and flip project for the deadline to a contender. But back to Muse and back to the puck pursuit and the pressure and everything. For a lot of the people who have been there, including you, that I've talked to about the first 2 days, and this also kind of weaves into Ryan Graves and the Kevin Hayes thing, is it kind of feels like this team isn't going to become suddenly the Florida Panthers. They're not going to be this heavy, hard-hitting team, but it does seem like one of the things Muse is bringing to this camp is This team this year is going to play with an edge. They are going to make you earn every patch of ice out there. And if they're not going to be able to, and we know they likely aren't going to be able to be the high flying Penguins of the mid 2000 or 2010s, excuse me, if nothing else, make your opponents go through 60 minutes of hell. Make them earn it. Make them come to you. If they want the puck, they got to go get it. If they want to get to the front of your net, they are going to have to walk through bodies and sticks and checks and everything. And especially for a guy like Ryan Graves, I hate to be Bob Airy about this, but if you're that big of a guy, just start throwing that weight around, brother. Like, nothing else has worked. Just start hitting things.
Just got to see it during the regular season now, depending on how many games he gets. But yes, that is the vibe I also get, especially if it translates to the regular season, that hopefully they'll be more of a pain to play against. They'll be more physical this year. I know that's something that a lot of fans, us two included on the show, we have been harping on these last few years, where the Penguins just haven't been physical enough. They don't play with enough bite, enough, fire, enough of an edge. Hopefully that changes this year through two training camp practices. Excuse me. I've seen more of that than I have these last couple of seasons. But again, Pat, we're still on September 19th. Let's see how it translates to games where you're playing bona fide cup contenders at times. But that will do it for this second segment. Coming up to end the show, it's Friday. You know what that means. Fan Take Friday. We're going to answer some of your questions and react to some of your takes right after this. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. That's my co-host, Patrick Damp. And this first one comes from Ryan, who asks, seeing the intensity of training camp turned up to 11 compared to last year's camp, it makes me believe that the tank is not on the table for this season. Okay, I guess we're going to have a small little discussion about tanking once again. Players are, we've said this before, players are not going to openly tank. I don't need to spend any more time on that. If they finish bottom five, I think it's a multitude of things, the goaltending being even worse, a lot of trades happening, especially maybe two of the three of Rust, Raquel, Carlson, maybe Sid taking a step back, Geno even taking more of a step back, them just being, even worse than a lot of pundits expect. I think that's the way they truly tank and like bottom out. But, if they do keep this intensity in games, even if they lose more games than they win, which I think is going to happen, I do think if it translates, they're going to make teams earn it every night. And I don't think you're going to see a bunch of lulls where, you're just going through the motions for 4 to 5 games in a row for every, 7 to 10 days, something like that. So I definitely hear Ryan when it comes to that take.
It's a team with Sidney Crosby, Evgeni Malkin, and Chris Letang. They're three of the most proud, most competitive athletes we've ever known in this city. And they aren't just going to take it lying down. I know that's going to be disappointing for a lot of people who want the tank to be on, but I'm in agreement with you. I still think this is a pretty below average overall hockey team that has some slight upside if things go right. But at the end of the day, if they are losing hard-fought games, I think that is so much better than them just being outright bad and being a doormat for the rest of the league. So, and the other thing, and we're not going to dive all the way back into the tanking because we got a lot of good questions this week. We can't spend all the time on this one. I again will reiterate, being a team that battles, being a team that competes, but ultimately comes up short is a lot better for your long-term culture than being said doormat.
Right. You don't need to be getting blown out for nothing 5-1, 7-1, on a weekly basis or even a semi-weekly basis. Like that makes your culture even worse. Again, you don't want to have the culture that the Sabres have had for the last decade plus. Like that's also worst case scenario. As for the next comment here, this comes from Michael. From what we have seen at practice so far and player reactions, how likely do you think this team is to have practice days canceled in the midst of losing streaks? Unlikely, I think, so far. And it's only 2 days. We know that Mike Sullivan was canceling practices at times, even during some bad stretches of play these last few years. I think it is more unlikely right now. I think Dan Muse is going to be potentially even more intense, even being more competitive when a said losing streak happens. So I would go unlikely as of right now, but that can change.
I think context matters on this one. If just kind of like the last question, if they're in the midst of a losing streak, but they're putting up good efforts, they're competing, they're not getting their doors blown off, and they're, in a stretch of like 3 games in 5 days or 4 games in 6 days, something like that, and they're at least competing and putting an effort out there, I wouldn't be shocked if he had a couple off days here and there just so they don't burn out by game 82. But yeah, I mean, looking at Muse's intensity through 2 days, I don't see him turning this into a country club, but I also don't see him running this team ragged to the point where come February or March that they're just completely burned out.
That's fair. Like, I don't think he's going to, cancel a crap ton of practices. I'm sure there's going to be a few that get canceled for a bunch of different reasons, but I don't think it's going to be as frequent as what you saw the last, 2-3 years, something like that. This one comes from my favorite Chelsea fan out there. What's more likely, Jari being an all-star or Malkin scoring 90 plus points this season? Oh boy. I'm going to go Malkin 90 plus points. I think we know what Jari is at this point. And I'll say this, both of these are unlikely just because, A, Malkin's a lot older now. B, Jari just isn't very good. But if I had to pick one, I'll go Malkin 90 plus points. People can laugh at me in the comments. That's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that's the more likely one since he's probably going to play with Mantha and he's going to hopefully have a consistent winger that can actually play with him, which could up his numbers a little bit, though I don't think 90 points is in the ballpark. I also, again, I don't think it's going to happen or really even possible, but Jari, much like his last couple of predecessors, has shown to be at his best when somebody behind him could theoretically take his job. And if Shilovs becomes what he looked like down the stretch with Vancouver or even in Abbotsford, that could push Jari to be better. But again, he's also going to be a numbers game victim if that happens because there are so many better goalies ahead of him that unless he completely plays lights out, which I think is highly, highly, highly unlikely, that just won't happen. But both of them feel, I would go with the word implausible.
That's fair. And again, speaking of some of the other goalies, Sergei Murashov makes everything so effortless in practice. I was watching today, him just making routine saves. It looks like he's not even trying. Like, I just watch him, and even for some saves that look difficult, he's like, easy save for me. I'm just like, geez, man. Like, he's just so nonchalant about it. I don't think he's going to be NHL ready this year. I think he still needs another year, but he's still been very impressive these first 2 days of camp. One more to get to, I think, before we call it today. This one comes from Brian, wondering how Ben Kindle is looking in his first couple of days of camp. I think he's been fine. He had a couple of nice plays with the puck today. One really nice pass, another really nice finish. I don't think he's going to make the team this year. That's very, very unlikely. He's going to go back to junior and hopefully light it up, but I think he's been totally fine.
Yeah, I think again, I have not been there for the first 2 days. I'm hopefully going to be there Tuesday, just so people know. But I look at this, I look at Kindle's effort in some of the video I've seen, some of the people I've talked to. It feels like the IQ is there, the talent is there, but he has to start training like an NHLer. He's got to put on some muscle, get a little bit bigger, and he's got to work on his skating to get up to NHL level speed. But the good news about Kindle is because the IQ and the skill is there, the other two things that he needs when it comes to getting in better shape, putting on some muscle, and improving his skating, extremely doable. And now that he's in an NHL organization that is, as we know, really dedicating itself to development, he's going to get put on a really good track. And it wouldn't shock me if next training camp, he kind of goes the same way as Harrison Brunick, where he does really well, impresses, and they go, not just yet, but you're damn close.
That's fair. And the other stuff that you mentioned, it's going to come with time. Like, he's still very young right now. What's he going to look like once he's 22? I think the difference you're going to see, Pat, is going to be stark, in my opinion, once he's around that age. But I think that's going to do it for the Friday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'll be back at camp again on Saturday, bright and early, 8:45 start time. Again, free and open to the public. So if you're around, you see me, come say hello. We've had some listeners come up, say you love the show. We very much appreciate that. Thank you for coming up. We're trying to have Pat come out on Tuesday to see a practice. So if you see him there, come say hello. I'll be there too. And again, I'll be there on Saturday and the rest of camp as well. So that will do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. So we will talk to you all then.